What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto was cursed to love, but everyone he touched was doomed to die? If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. January 24th, Journal of Morimoto Riza. I met a man today. Actually. I was showering. Odd place to meet a man, right? But that's how it happened. I was nearly done in the shower, and I heard this deafening crash come from my bedroom. I turned off the water and hurriedly wrapped a towel around myself. When I reached the bedroom, there were two men standing in the middle of the floor, staring each other down. One had long, dark hair, and his clothes were so dark blue that they were nearly black. On his back was an odd symbol, like a fan, red and white. The other had short, spiky blonde hair, and eyes like the sea. He saw me first, and apologized for them bursting into the window, which was now demolished. The dark man turned his black eyes on me, and I felt a chill go through me. It was as if I were an insect to him. My mouth worked, and I couldn't speak. Under his eyes, I felt so helpless. I hate feeling that way. The blonde man saw the way that the dark man was looking at me. He spoke again. "Sasuke, don't touch her. She has nothing to do with this." I wondered for a second what it was he meant, and then this Sasuke pulled a kunai, grabbed me, and held it to my throat. "Move and she dies." "You know I will, Naruto." And, me being the weak moron that I am, I fainted. Now, here I am in bed, where I have been for about 6 hours, it seems. Naruto sat across from Sasuke, who was bound and gagged. "Bastard," he growled. "What did you have to go and grab that girl for?" He had been trying to get an answer out of his former friend for some time. Now, he just asked the heir, knowing that even without the leather strap keeping him from speaking, he still wouldn't tell him. The problem with using someone as a shield is that they have to stay upright. When she'd fainted, Naruto made his move and secured him. The dark-haired young man glared over at him. It had been a year since Sasuke had killed Orochimaru and taken over as the resident evil nut job of the universe. He and Naruto were now both 20 years old. In the process of him attempting to murder Tsunade, he had killed Sakura instead, and showed absolutely no remorse for slaughtering her. It was hard for Naruto to hate, but if hate were possible for him, then every ounce of his hatred was aimed at the man before him. "I wish I could kill you right now. But, Tsunade-sama has better plans for you." Sasuke's eyes widened. He seemed slightly frightened. "Oh, yes. She wants revenge. Sakura was like a daughter to her, asshole." He felt his rage flaring again. "Why, Sasuke? Why did you have to kill her? She loved you. She loved you more than her life. That's why she—" Naruto clamped his mouth shut, shoving the memory of Sakura's dead eyes away. The funeral would be the next day. Sasuke would not be attending. Tsunade had very interesting plans for him, as Naruto understood it, and he wished he could be there when the sick bastard was broken, bleeding, and crying. He wanted to see pain on Sasuke's face. He wanted to know that he was, in fact, human. Sasuke had killed 12 Anbu and Sakura, as well as critically injured both Yamanaka Ino and Inuzuka Kiba. But it had only taken a small miscalculation on his part to deliver himself into Naruto's hands. It would have been what Shikamaru called checkmate. Naruto drew a long string of beads from his pocket. Wrapping them twice around Sasuke's neck, he made a few hand seals, and then watched as the chakra bit into the dark-haired man's neck, sinking in and weakening him. His eyes bulged. Naruto smiled. Even if that had not been part of his orders from the Hokage, he would have used that jutsu. It sucked chakra out of Sasuke, nearly to the point where it would kill him, as well as sapping his physical strength. At the moment, Naruto didn't need to have him bound, but he didn't want to take any chances. "I'll have to go to the girl's house and apologize tomorrow after Sakura's funeral." "You bastard. Asshole. Jerk." He couldn't think of any more names to call him. "I still don't understand why you used her as a shield. You don't even like women." But there had been that look in his eyes, just like when Sasuke had gone after Hinata. Neji had been furious. He left the village for 3 months, and came back battered and bloody. After he finally tracked the bastard down, his battle with Sasuke had lasted days, but in the end, he couldn't kill him. Hinata had cared for his wounds personally. They were now both broken. Broken by Sasuke. Because of that, they clung to one another. Naruto, still wearing his funeral garb, knocked on the door of the apartment he and Sasuke had wrecked the day before. The same girl answered. He smiled nervously. Hi. I just came to tell you that I'm sorry I broke your window. If you like, I can pay for it to be fixed. The girl shook her head. Won't you come in, Gomen? My name is Uzumaki Naruto. I'm a special Junin of Konoha. He stepped inside the apartment. I was pursuing the other man you saw. He is a great criminal. He has killed many people and betrayed the village. The girl was nodding slowly. He decided to change the subject. He didn't want to talk about Sasuke. Your accent is familiar. You wouldn't happen to be from the Wave Country, would you? The girl blushed, nodding again. Oh, you know the bridge they built about 8 years ago now? You mean the Naruto bridge? Her eyes widened, and Naruto smiled. He nodded. You're the Naruto? Wow, I'm pleased to meet you. She bowed formally, and Naruto waved her off. Come on, there's no need for that. But can you tell me your name? Again, she blushed. Morimoto Riza. Please, Naruto-san, sit down. I was about to make tea. Will you have some? Naruto nodded with a smile, and made for the couch. He sat, and listened to the girl moving in the kitchen. A feeling of guilt came over him. Sakura loved tea, he thought, but she won't have it again. Damn you Uchiha Sasuke. You'll burn in the darkest hell for what you've done. After a few moments of gripping the couch cushions and fuming, the young man made a conscious effort to calm himself. He did not want to alarm Riza-chan when she came back in. Instead of thinking of Sakura, he tried to think of this girl he had met just yesterday, the day his friend was killed. She was tall, with long hair the color of walnuts. Her eyes were a bright, clear green, lighter than Sakura's. If he had not been so busy tying Sasuke up and restraining him the day before, he would have had more time to admire her long legs, and the smooth skin of her chest. He had put her to bed after brushing the debris off of the covers, and pulled the blankets up to her chin. She had smelled like a mild soap and ginger. Leaning back on the couch, he closed his eyes. A small smile found its way to his lips, and he thought of how he had given Sasuke a swift kick to the stomach before he'd scooped her up from the floor and walked her over to the bed. It was a pleasant thought. What was not pleasant was the look in Sasuke's eyes when he had turned to Riza the day before. It was just like what Hinata had said. Hinata had been soaking in the hot springs district, in one of the women-only bath houses. The air had been misty, since the day was cold, and she sat with her back against one of the large rocks in the water. Breathing deeply, she moved her arms lazily over the surface of the water. Watching the ripples, she was content. Her day had been good, and this was the perfect end to it. She smiled, leaning her head back against the rock and closing her eyes. A solitary bath in the hot springs was just what she needed. Her solitude was soon interrupted, however, by the feeling of another's presence. Her eyes opened lazily, then they widened in alarm. Standing there, more than knee-deep in water, was Uchiha Sasuke, the successor to the rule of the Village of Sound. He looked down at her with a mixture of contempt and a sort of twisted desire that frightened her. Sasuke reached down and took hold of the back of her hair, pulling her up slowly and steadily. Oddly enough, it wasn't really hurting her at all. Sasuke-kun? She couldn't think of what to say. His eyes were burning into her, and she could not look away. She felt his other hand remove her towel. It was at this point that she seemed to realize what was about to happen. Hinata's once unsure voice changed rapidly. In a very firm tone, she said, "Let go of me." He leaned closer to her. She could feel his breath on her face as he looked into her eyes and said, "Why should I, Hinata-chan?" And he moved his face down to her neck, softly kissing translucent skin. She shivered involuntarily. Sasuke's hand released her hair, and he backed her against the rock. Hinata's mind revolted at the thought of what he was doing. Finally, as his hands moved over her body, she had had quite enough. "Because, Sasuke-kun, if you don't let me go, I'll be forced to hurt you." That made him laugh. It was a cold, empty sound, and for the barest of instants, she pitied him. Anyone who seemed so empty was surely worthy of pity, weren't they? But when he looked back at her with those eyes again, she had no pity. Compassion was for those who really deserved it, and he did not. Her hands planted themselves firmly on his chest, and she pushed him away. He slid back a few feet, giving Hinata just enough space to enter her fighting stance. Sasuke's mouth curled in a smirk. "You planning to fight me, Hinata-chan?" Grim determination set into her features, and she activated her Byakugan. She nodded. Sasuke raised an eyebrow and said, "Hi. Hajime, Hinata." She began, using techniques learned from her father. None of them seemed to work. Hinata's stance changed slightly, and her style became tighter, more regulated, and then, she broke into a series of fast movements that Sasuke recognized. Neji had been teaching her, and she used his 64 hands technique on Sasuke, closing off his main chakra openings. He seemed not a little frightened of her, as she advanced on him. "Sasuke-kun, if you don't leave, I'll have to kill you. For Naruto's sake, I'll let you go." And he had run. Hinata fell with a splash to the ground, wishing to drown herself. When she got home, she cried in her room for 2 days, not allowing anyone in. After the second day, Neji had broken her door in. She told him everything. His eyes had been a white fire, filled with a new anger, a new hatred. "Please, please, Ana-san," she had begged him, "please don't go." Hinata clung to him, as he sat stiffly, trying to stand. A moment later, he relented. She held him tightly. His hand touched her face, gently. "Hinata-sama, please. I promised to protect you. Let me at least pay him back for the crime he nearly committed." Hinata's eyes had searched his face, trying to find the reason for his sudden rage. It was more than just his vow of protection. There was something else, and then she saw it. At the heart of that fire in his eyes was the reason and the cause for it. "I can't let him hurt my Hinata-sama. I can't let anyone ever hurt you. I would rather die." He had held her for a long time, strong arms surrounding her, and she felt safe. Only then was she able to stop crying. Her tears dried, and he continued to hold her, that fierce look never fading from his eyes. When she became sleepy, he carried her to the bed, and covered her with the blankets. As she drifted off to sleep, she felt his lips on hers, a light, chaste kiss. His voice whispered to her in the half-dream she found herself in. "Let me protect you, Hinata, forever." He heard the clinking of cups, and her footsteps coming back from the kitchen, and these had broken his reverie. She served the tea, not looking him in the eye. It was like dealing with Hinata-chan, only he had a feeling that this modesty and timidity were not genuine. "Riza-chan?" She looked at him. "Are you okay? You seem kinda, I dunno, nervous." Her right eyebrow rose, and a spark ignited in her eyes. "Wouldn't you be nervous if someone who saw you nearly naked one day showed up at your door the next day?" Her voice had taken on a tone that reminded him far too much of Sakura. "Oh, this is bad, it's too soon. You know this is bad, right? I mean, I nearly fainted when I opened the door. It's not every day that a girl meets a man under such a strange circumstance." Naruto nodded wisely. She was blushing again. He tried not to smile, but failed miserably. She simply reminded him too much of Sakura. "Hi, I hope you weren't too embarrassed?" His clumsily probing question seemed to take her by surprise. "I didn't mean to pry, it's just that you're blushing." He smiled into his teacup. "Why am I talking to her like I used to talk to Sakura? She's not Sakura, she's Riza." But just then, she did something that Sakura would have done, only slightly altered. Fast as any taijutsu that Kakashi used, she reached over and took his cup from him with one hand while smacking him on top of the head with the other. Handing his cup back to him, she said, "Now, I don't think that's any of your business, is it, Naruto-san? Itai. Oi, drop the san, will you? If you're gonna hit me, you should just call me Naruto. Everyone else does." She smiled, nodding. He felt a lump begin to grow on his head. She was very much like Sakura, indeed. But then, she did something that was un-Sakura-like. She ran from the room, returning a moment later with a plastic bag, full of ice. She set it on his head. "Gomen, Naruto. I lost my temper. It's always been a problem for me. Why are you looking at me like that?" Her brow furrowed. His eyes widened. "She's not Sakura, not Sakura, not Sakura. You just remind me of someone, that's all." He sipped his tea, while holding the bag of ice with his other hand. "Who do I remind you of? Someone very special. Someone I'll never meet again." He turned and looked out of the window, removing the bag of ice from his head and letting it sit on the couch next to him. "She's dead. That man I was chasing yesterday, he killed her." He was not sure why he was telling her these things. Was it because she was like Sakura? Probably. "I wanted to kill him for what he did. I wanted to make him hurt, make him pay. He killed the one person in the world who truly loved him. She did, you know. How, I'll never understand, but she loved him more than she did her own life." Naruto did not need to turn his sad blue eyes to her to know that she was staring hard at him. an expression of surprise on her face. He didn't want to continue, but now that he had begun, he couldn't stop. He told her everything. His name is Uchiha Sasuke. He is one of the 2 remaining members of the Uchiha clan. His brother killed the rest. Sasuke was mostly okay after that until Orochimaru, one of the legendary Sannin, marked him with a cursed seal. It gave him power, and he wanted more. He wanted power so that he could kill his brother. Orochimaru wanted to use him as a container for his spirit. He was immortal, you see. He transferred his memories, power, and spirit into a new body every so often. Sasuke went to him willingly, but somehow managed to keep from being used as Orochimaru's container. Then, a year ago, Orochimaru's body was found, and a new ruler appeared in the village of Sound. Sasuke had killed Orochimaru. He had taken the man's power. He had become so arrogant, so hungry for power, that he had killed anyone who stood in his way, including his master. Then, just yesterday, he tried to kill the Godem. He only succeeded in killing 12 of our best Anbu, as well as Hirano Sakura. She tried to reason with him, to stop him. He just used a terrible jutsu, and cut her down. I can still see her eyes when the Chidori tore through her. He felt tears course down his cheeks. They had been held back during the funeral. He promised himself that he would not cry. Now he had broken that promise, and in front of a total stranger. All because she looked like Sakura. Naruto? He turned his head to look at her. To his surprise, she was crying. She rose from her chair and came to sit next to him on the couch. Riza took his hand. He looked so sad, sitting there with his cup, and tears falling from his eyes. Naruto had told her that she reminded him of someone special to him. In his grief, he had seen this Sakura in her. She thought momentarily, what horrible timing. Under any other circumstances, she would have no problem with him looking at her the way he was. He was beautiful. He was leanly muscular, tall, and those eyes, they made her want to melt. He was funny, too. But she was afraid of what the implications of her looking like his close friend might be. If that was the case, then why was she holding his hand? She told herself it was to comfort him, which was partially true. It sent a pain through her to see those beautiful eyes so sad. But then again, she thought, you'd better be very careful. You're half a step away from falling for him. Watch it, woman. Naruto had excused himself quickly but politely soon after Riza had taken his hand. He didn't trust himself to be around her any longer. Riza had asked if she could visit him later in the week, to make sure he was alright. He had agreed, if only to ease his exit. He didn't want her to think badly of him. As he wandered through the streets of Konoha, feeling utterly lost, he found himself outside Yamanaka Flowers. Pushing the door open, he found Ino behind the counter. He had been surprised that Tsunade had spent most of her chakra to heal Ino and Kiba. They were now both fully recovered, only a day after being half dead. She had a box of tissues on the counter, and was wiping her eyes with one as he entered. As she looked up at him, she smiled, but it was forced. "Ohio, Naruto. How can I help you?" Ino had just gotten a good look at his face. Her eyes widened. She held up a finger, indicating that he should wait. She went into the back, returning with her mother and a jacket. She slipped on the jacket and took him by the arm, leading him out of the shop, and leaving her mother at the counter. "Let's go, Naruto. We're out of here." Her hand was a gentle pressure on his arm, and he allowed himself to be guided out of the door and through the streets. He watched her back as she dragged him through the street, her blonde hair swaying in the cold breeze. Why had he gone to Ino's? It was still a mystery to him. He was not paying attention to anything except for Ino's back. Naruto didn't notice when they entered the doors of the Ninja Academy. He didn't care as they mounted the stairs. And when they burst out onto the rooftop, he merely hugged himself against the cold. Ino dragged him to a bench, making him sit. She sat next to him. "Naruto, you're a mess. Are you okay?" Finally, he snapped out of his stupor. "Ino, I met this girl. She looks just like Sakura." The kunoichi's eyes grew large. "I don't understand. She looks like her, and she acts like her. There are differences, too, but," his voice caught in his throat, "it's like she's back. She's going to come visit me later this week. I don't know what's happening." Ino's eyes had narrowed. "Are you sure? You're not hallucinating anything? You're under a lot of stress, Naruto. It would be easy for you to have seen something that's not there." He suddenly seemed angry. Naruto grabbed her hand, and put it on the top of his head. "Feel that lump? She gave that to me. Does that feel like a hallucination to you? His blue eyes were aflame. Then, he let go of her hand and slumped. Tell me that's not something Sakura would do. His voice had become saturated with loneliness. Was it the girl that owned the apartment you captured Sasuke in? He nodded. Is she really like Sakura? Again, he nodded. Then, if it's all right, I'd like to meet her. Ino's eyes looked like she was far, far away. She had not been on good terms with Sakura for a very long time. Oddly, she was taking the pink-haired woman's death just as hard as Naruto was. It was most likely the fact that she had never made peace with her before Sasuke killed her. I miss her, Naruto. Ino was beginning to cry. Naruto took her hand, then gave it up. He enfolded her gently in his arms. Ino's head rested on his chest, and he rocked slowly forward and back. I miss her, too, Ino. I miss her, too. More than you know. Sasuke looked up at Tsunade, glaring. She looked down on him, glaring back. You have a visitor, Uchiha. Tsunade stepped aside, allowing Sasuke's visitor to enter the cell. The young man's eyes widened. We have allowed him temporary provisional asylum. I'm sure you two have a lot to catch up on. Smiling, she left the cell, and locked it behind her. Neji walked down the path to the main house. It was early evening, and he had an invitation from Hinata for dinner. He wasn't really feeling up to dinner with the clan, so he accepted her invitation. She had a small room that she used for various purposes, and it was there that he was headed. His thoughts drifted as he walked. The day he left to find Sasuke, he had all but let her know his feelings, though he was not sure she would remember. She had been nearly asleep. His lips still remembered the feeling of hers, and he nearly stumbled, thinking of it. He eventually came to the door of Hinata's room. Raising his hand, he knocked. He heard Hinata's voice from within, telling him to come in. He opened the door, and found her sitting next to a small, low table. She rose, and ushered him to a cushion opposite where she had been sitting. Then she briefly left the room, coming back a moment later with a tray. As he watched her laying out the food, he saw that she was not looking directly at him. She only avoided eye contact with him now at times when she was nervous. What caused this nervousness? Hinata rose again, moving to place the tray in the corner, and retrieve the tea and cups. Her movements were graceful, measured, and practiced. The lavender kimono she wore complemented her raven-colored hair, and draped perfectly over her shoulders. He felt his heart jump a little as she offered him his teacup. Her eyes had met his for the merest of instants, but what he saw there? Kakashi sat in a booth in a bar, 2 empty sake bottles sitting in front of him. Kurenai, sitting across from him, frowned. Her hand drifted toward the 3rd bottle, which was full. When her hand touched it, Kakashi's hand gripped hers, and his dark eye glared at her. Both Junin drew kunai in the same instant, laying them at the other's throats. Kakashi, stop this. You are not the one to blame. But I taught him that jutsu. His voice was a low growl. It is my fault. If I had not taught him that, if I had taught him better, Sakura would still be alive. Kurenai lowered her kunai. Kakashi's remained for a moment, then he lowered his, as well. His hand fell from the bottle. She lifted it from the table, and took his cup. She poured herself a cupful, and emptied it directly. Kiba had been injured, and though she didn't blame herself for her former student's injury, he was like a son to her. She was stressed out too, though not to the extent that Kakashi was. She gave up the cup, and drank the sake directly from the bottle, draining it. As the warmth of it spread through her, she looked at Kakashi. Kakashi, please, would Sakura want you to be this way? His eye widened, and he sadly shook his head. Then please, leave the sake alone. Come with me. She put money down on the table, and pulled him out of his seat, then out of the bar. They walked down the street, silent. After a time, they came to the memorial stone. There, a new set of names was already inscribed. The last name was Hirano Sakura. The silver-haired Junin sat next to the stone. He traced the freshly carved characters of Sakura's name. His eyes strayed to another name, further up the stone. Uchiha Obito's name was listed among those, as well. Kakashi leaned his head against the stone. He would not cry. He never cried. Kurenai stared at him. He was broken. Would he ever mend? Hello, little brother. Sasuke whimpered in the corner of his cell. Itachi loomed over him. The elder Uchiha looked down on his brother. I'm afraid that the Uchiha clan may just have to die with you, little brother. The Hokage is a vicious woman. I was surprised to meet Guy, and more surprised by the message he had for me. He knelt and poked Sasuke's forehead. He did not enjoy the fear in his brother's face. However, it seemed that he was not fit to continue the clan after all. Riza lay awake. She could not rid her mind of the image of those eyes. It was nearly 3 in the morning, and if she didn't get sleep soon, she would be worthless in the pastry shop when the sun came up. Her eyes strayed to the blanket nailed over the gaping hole in the wall where her bedroom window once had been. It was not so cold as it was the night before, but she wished that it was fixed already. Sighing, she got up from bed, and walked to her closet. She was restless. There was not going to be any sleep for her, and she knew it. Pulling a long black leather coat from her closet, she threw it onto the bed. She also took out a pair of boots, a long-sleeved black shirt, and a dark green skirt that reached her knees. I must be crazy, she thought aloud as she pulled on the clothes, and walked to her door. Just as she was putting her shoes on to leave, there was a knock on her door. Her eyes widened. I guess I'm not the only one who can't sleep tonight, she muttered, pulling on her left boot and standing. As she withdrew the dead bolt, she turned the knob, and then opened the door. Standing there, at her door, was the very person she was on the way out to see. Uzumaki Naruto was smiling nervously at her. "Anu, Riza-chan?" He saw that she was fully dressed. "Gomen, Riza-chan, you were going out?" He seemed slightly disappointed. Embarrassment colored her cheeks. "I couldn't sleep. I was going to go for a walk. Want to come?" She knew that he had done exactly as she had been planning to do. Smiling his nervous smile again, he nodded. She locked her door and they went down the stairs and into the street. "Was there something you needed, Naruto?" Riza looked over at him and saw him biting his lower lip. He looked at her and said in a rush, "I thought that you might get sick sleeping in a cold room. I was gonna see if you wanted to come over to my house until they fixed your window." His eyes were wide, as if he was surprised that he had the gall to say such a thing. A small smile formed on her lips. "Okay, what?" His voice was incredulous. He had obviously expected her to say no. Honestly, how do you say no to that face? He sagged in relief as he realized what she had said. The two of them began to walk in the direction of Naruto's apartment. She had to be up in 3 hours, but she was sure that it would be easier to sleep now. When they got to his apartment, he opened the door and let her in. It was a small place, but neat, and had the distinct feeling of having been meticulously cleaned just recently. She raised an eyebrow. This did not seem like it was the place's usual state, at least not knowing Naruto. "What are you talking about? You don't know him at all." The blonde-haired shinobi left the room for a few minutes, and came back with blankets and a pillow. He settled himself on the couch. "You take the bed, Riza-chan." She smiled. "If you need, there should be some clothes you can borrow in the dresser." "Arigato, Naruto. Good night." She walked to the bedroom, shrugging out of her coat. This room was just as clean as the rest of the place, and she opened one of the drawers. Nothing but neatly folded clothes. After a moment, she found a large black t-shirt. She threw her clothes over the back of a chair, and put on the t-shirt. It was long, reaching down to mid-thigh. As she settled into the sheets, she inhaled the smell of the bed. It was the same as his smell. Riza fell quickly asleep. In the living room, it was Naruto who lay awake. She was sleeping in the other room. He felt a very strong urge to go in there. Usually, his urges drove him. In this instance, he was attempting to use some caution, which was not something he was used to. He just watched the door. About an hour after she had gone into the room, the door opened, and she walked out. Riza wore one of his shirts, and nothing else that he could see. He blinked. The moonlight coming in through the window reflected off of her skin as she walked into the kitchen for a glass of water. He usually kept a glass next to the sink, so she took that and poured a glass from the tap. She took the glass, walking past him where he lay on the couch. She went over to the window. As she sipped her water, he watched her, eyes barely open. After a few minutes, the glass had been drained, and the woman at the window stretched, revealing a lot more leg, and making Naruto suddenly very glad that it was dark in the room. He watched her as she put the glass back near the sink, and as she looked back at him. The expression on her face was strange. In that moment, he saw how very unlike Sakura she was. Sakura had never looked at him like that. Her eyes had a soft look to them, and her mouth curved ever so slightly. Her head tilted to the side, and she started to walk toward him. He shut his eyes. Her voice was next to his ear, and he felt her hair tickling his face. I know you're awake, Naruto. You haven't been asleep at all. You won't sleep well on the couch. Get to bed. She straightened, and he heard her footsteps fade as she went back to the bedroom. What? He was suddenly very confused, his heart beating very fast. Did she just say what I think she did? For a few minutes, he thought about what she said. She was right. He really didn't sleep well on the couch. But she was in the bed. He sighed. Throwing the covers off of himself, he grabbed his pillow. Naruto padded down the hall to the bedroom. He found Riza in the bed, lying on her side. Her hair was spread over the pillow, and the moon shone on her face. Sleepily, she said, "Are you coming, or are you just going to stand there with your mouth open?" Naruto made himself walk slowly. Otherwise, he would have made a flying leap for the bed. He slipped into the sheets beside her, keeping his distance. Even though he was nervous, he fell asleep quickly. At about 6 in the morning, he woke up, hearing a small noise. Riza was standing next to his chair, completely naked, sorting through her clothes. His eyes nearly popped out of his head. Naruto knew he should not be watching her, but he couldn't tear his eyes away. So beautiful. He watched as she pulled on her undergarments. Then, to his surprise, she turned to him, smiling, and said, "Ohio, Naruto. You knew I was awake?" She walked across the room, clad in nothing but her bra and panties, and sat next to him on the bed. Why does she have to sit so close? Oh, man, this is bad. Riza smiled at his alarmed expression. You bet I knew. Has anyone ever told you that you're easy to read? All the fucking time, he grumbled. Sakura had told him that numerous times. Her smile widened. Well, what? You were staring at me like you had never seen a naked woman before. Did you at least like what you saw? What in the world was going on? She was asking some pretty strange questions. Naruto couldn't speak for a long moment, since his eyes kept trying to not look at her face. Then, he ripped his eyes from the intricate lace that covered her. Riza-chan, I'll be honest with you. If anyone didn't like seeing that when they woke up in the morning, I'd have to smack them. He said this to cover up for the fact that he had not, in fact, seen a naked woman before. Riza leaned back on her elbows, laughing. Her elbows just happened to be resting on his thighs. She turned to him, still laughing, and saw the look on his face. Gomen, Naruto. I've gone and made you uncomfortable. I guess I'll have to be more careful about that. You could have thought of that before. Now, if I stand up, I'll be really embarrassed. He laughed nervously. Riza-chan, could you please put some clothes on? This made her laugh again, and she leaned over to him, and gave him a small kiss on the cheek. He turned 5 shades of red in no time flat. Laughing to herself, she got up and went to the chair. He watched as she put her clothes on. How does she manage to make getting dressed look? Shouldn't it be the other way around? Confused thoughts along these lines ran through his head, and she bid him farewell for the day, saying that she would be back around 6 that evening. He blinked. Thinking aloud after she was gone, he said, I slept in the same bed with a girl, and she was naked in front of me on purpose. What the hell is going on? He looked at the picture of Sakura on the wall. Can you explain this to me? Or maybe you're making little pushes from where you are. The picture didn't answer him. He looked over at the clock, snorting. I don't have to be anywhere until 8:30. I'm going back to sleep. Maybe when I wake up, I won't have any trouble walking. Kakashi opened his eyes. Hangover. He sat up, sheets falling from his bare torso. A hand reached over, taking hold of his shoulder and pulling him back down. His eyes widened. When he looked down, he saw a very naked Yuhi Kurenai. She was half asleep. What the hell happened? Wait, that's a stupid question. Shit, I've been drooling over her for years, then something finally happens, and I can't remember? Shit, double shit. He lay back down, holding his aching head. Lying on his side, he watched her. She was beautiful. He cursed himself for drinking all that sake. Her eyes opened. Ohio. Her voice was low. She smiled at him, and touched his face. His bare face. Of course, his mask. Ohio, Kurenai. His voice was nervous. She laughed. You blacked out, didn't you? Kakashi leaned on his hand. Yup. Can't remember a damned thing. Laughing again, she leaned over and kissed him. That's too bad. Now he was curious. What's too bad? She clamped her lips shut, and refused to say anything. Hey, no fair. He could tell she was holding back a smile. Come on, tell me. He reached over and grabbed at her, and after some wrestling, was lying on top of her. Her lips curled into a smile, and she raised an eyebrow. What are you doing? Making sure I don't forget again. He leaned down to her, and she met his lips halfway. Open up, Naruto, Ino yelled. You better open the door or I'll break it down. She was still banging on the door, and had been for nearly 10 minutes. She heard the locks being disengaged from within, and stopped her pounding. The door opened to reveal Naruto, still bleary from sleep. She cocked an eyebrow at him. Well? She asked, and he waved his hand lazily for her to come in. Would I want, Ino? He yawned. Ino looked at him, her eyes narrowing. You were supposed to be at work 3 hours ago. Your genin team is now helping Iruka to train the first years. What were you doing? She eyed him for a moment. You look like hell, Baka. You really know how to make a guy feel good about himself, don't you, Ino? Naruto rolled his eyes. Sit down. I have to make myself some tea. Can't talk until I have some caffeine. He padded to the kitchen. He suddenly realized that he was still only wearing his pajama pants. He snorted. Worse things had happened already that morning, and he was completely unconcerned by Ino seeing him shirtless. As he took the tea canister down, he had a thought. You want tea? Ino's voice drifted into the kitchen. Sure, not too strong, okay? Gotcha. He was beginning to move a little more quickly now, and his eyes were adjusting to the light. In a few minutes, he was toting a tray with 2 cups on it. He set it down on the small table near the couch. There you go, Ino. He sat down as she took her cup, and threw his legs over the arm of the couch. Sorry I didn't make it into work, Ino. I was having problems last night. How so? Her head cocked to one side, and that malevolent Ino grin came over her face. Well, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking of how Riza-chan was still staying in her apartment, and that window still isn't fixed. It's the middle of January, and I didn't want her to get sick. While I was debating going over to her apartment, I cleaned up. Ino looked around. She was a bit shocked, actually. His apartment had never been so clean that she could remember. So after I finished doing that, I went over to her apartment to see if she would come to stay with me until her window got fixed. When was this? About 3 in the morning. Baka, you woke her up? Nope. She was on her way out of the door when I got there. Said she couldn't sleep, and that she was going to go for a walk. She asked if I wanted to come, and I put the question to her while we were walking. He said this as matter-of-factly as he could, since he was still reeling from the events of the morning. On her way out the door, huh? Ino grinned. On her way to see you, more likely. He shook his head, but she kept pushing. Where did she sleep? Tell me that. In my bed. And you? Where did you sleep? On the couch at first, and then she came out and got me. Naruto thought that he could catch where this was going. You slept with her? No. I slept in the same bed as her, but I didn't sleep with her. You've got a dirty mind, Ino. He crossed his arms over his chest, and frowned. Snorting, Ino said, it takes one to know one. So when do I get to meet this cheeky woman? Tonight, if you like. I figure it would be best if she met my friends, so that they don't think I'm nuts. He brightened. Do you think we could have one of your famous on-the-fly parties? You're really good at setting those up, Ino. He flashed her his most winning smile, and proved that it worked on more women than just Riza. Ino giggled. Sure, I'll get to all of the people at the academy. Why don't you go and talk to the clans? He nodded. She jumped up, happy to be able to do something. Oh, and Naruto, you may want to put some more clothes on. She took one last look at him, giggled again, and walked out of his apartment. Women are very strange. Naruto thought this as he stood and walked to the bathroom. The entire time he was in the shower, he tried not to think of anything. When he did, he just kept thinking of Sakura and Riza, and how much the one resembled the other, and what if Sakura was trying to make him happy from wherever she was. Sasuke panted, huddled in the corner. His brother had been using the Mangekyo Sharingan on him in small increments for the past day, and he felt as if he were about to die. Or go insane. Or was he already insane? Take your pick, it didn't matter at this point. All that mattered was that his brother had been making him relive Sakura's death over and over and over again for the past day, each time in more gruesome detail. He supposed that it was to make him feel guilt or remorse. It produced neither. It only made him want to kill Itachi all the more. Sasuke, why don't you just say it? Itachi stared impassively down at him. You're weak. You've always been weak. But soon, your weakness won't matter anymore. Just like all the others, you'll be dead. Itachi crouched before him, his Akatsuki coat touching the floor. Sasuke looked at his once beloved brother. What had he turned into? What had either of them turned into? It suddenly hit him. He was a monster, just like Itachi. From the bottom of his throat, he felt a scream building. His hands tore at his hair, face contorting. After nearly a full minute of looking at his brother and thinking of all that Itachi had done, compared with the things he had done, that scream ripped through the air, echoing through the empty cells surrounding his. Itachi smiled. Finally you understand, little brother. Your weakness has made you long for power. Why do you seek it? To kill me? I'm afraid that will be impossible, now. I suggest that you make peace with yourself. I'll be back tomorrow. With that, the elder Uchiha turned to leave. Itachi? Yes? Did you love our parents? Hi, but I was too much like you back then. I realize my mistakes now. What I did then was unforgivable. I killed, but I also drove you to kill. You are the product of my arrogance. I live now to correct my mistakes. Perhaps one day, long from now, I will be allowed peace. But peace will not come for you. The guard then unlocked the door. Itachi stepped out of it and left. Word spread quickly about the get-together at Naruto's apartment, and no one turned it down. Ino was happy. It would be not only a chance for she and the rest of Naruto's friends to meet this woman he seemed so nuts over, but also a celebration of a life that was now over. Funerals were far too sad. She had known Sakura for a very long time, and she was sure that the pink-haired woman would not want them to be crying. She had died a shinobi's death. Though she thought this, it still made her sad that she had not been on speaking terms with Sakura. She had missed her for a long time, but even after Sasuke had gone away, they stayed away from one another. These were the thoughts she had as she waited on the bridge for Naruto. She watched her reflection in the water. Her hair was long once again, and her ears had a few more earrings in them, but overall, she looked much as she had back when she and Sakura fought over Sasuke. She sighed. Hearing footsteps, she turned, thinking to find Naruto. Instead, she saw a man in an Akatsuki coat. Her eyes widened, and her hand shot over to her pouch. The man held up his hands. Gomen, I am not going to attack you. I was only walking past, and I saw that you looked sad. Out of curiosity, I decided to come and ask you why you looked that way. His eyes were red, and he had dark hair. He must be Uchiha Itachi. Her hand moved away from her shuriken, but she did not relax. I was thinking of a friend of mine who died recently. She was killed, oddly enough, by your brother. Ino's voice became raspy toward the end, and she gripped the railing. I'm not going to let him see me cry. I won't. She heard him walk closer to her as she stared down at the water. When he was no more than 3 feet away, he stopped. When she turned to look at him, he had undone the top 2 buttons of his coat, and his arm was resting on the third. My condolences. I also would like to apologize for her death. I am the reason that my brother became what he is today. Ino's shock showed on her face. The last thing she had expected out of a man who slaughtered an entire clan was to hear an apology. The thing was, it sounded as if he meant what he said. She suddenly felt rude. Turning fully toward him, she bowed formally. Hajime, I am Yamanaka Ino. I apologize for my rudeness before. Itachi started. Her apology was sincere. Bowing in return, he said, Hajime, I am called Uchiha Itachi, and there is no apology necessary. I admit that I can't be the best person to find randomly walking around. His mouth twitched into a slight smile. Just then, she heard Naruto's voice. Oi, Ino. He ran toward them. When he saw Itachi, he stiffened. Itachi. Naruto. Itachi's voice still held the same implacable calm. He turned to Ino. Excuse me, Ino-san. I must be going. The Hokage wishes me to continue my work tomorrow, and I need to rest. I beg your pardon. He bowed formally. Ino bowed, not saying anything. The elder Uchiha walked away, and Naruto's questioning look was waved off. Don't worry about him. He's fine. Everyone is coming. I think we should make this a party more about Sakura than anything else. You got any food? Koji's coming. Naruto snorted and suddenly looked dazed. I guess it's a good thing I just got paid, huh? Ino slung her arm around his neck as they walked in the direction of the grocery store. Don't worry, Baka. I'll help out. He smiled weakly. What's the matter? Nothing. Everything. Everyone is coming. I need to tell Riza-chan. She'll be back around 6. I told everyone 7 so that I would have time to tell her. What time did you tell people? 7:30. But you know Iruka. He'll want to show up early. Kakashi will be late as usual. Ack, don't say his name. You wouldn't believe what I saw when I was over asking him about the party. He explained that he had been ushered into Kakashi's apartment to find Kurenai-sensei in Kakashi's bathrobe. No, Ino wailed. That's hilarious. Well, I suppose it was bound to happen sooner or later. He's been nuts over her for the past 4 years. I guess that all it takes is a little sake? They both laughed at that. Neji sat with Hinata in the garden. She was looking up at the sky. Should he tell her about his talk with Hiyashi-sama? He bit his lip. No, he could wait. It was enough sitting here with her, watching the shadows the tree cast as they moved over her face. The cedars were fragrant, and Neji breathed in their scent. He looked up at the sky as well, watching the wind blow the clouds past. They were wispy today, a sure sign of snow in the near future. Anu, Ana-san? Yes? Naruto-kun came by this morning. He has invited you and I to a party at his apartment, and I got the impression that it was in honor of Sakura-chan. He looked over at her eyes. They were wide, and in them he saw a mixture of emotions. Ana-san, I know that you don't like parties, but I thought it might be nice if you would come with me. He didn't even have to think about it. Hi, Hinata-sama. It didn't matter where they were. So long as he was with her, he was happy. Itachi looked back at the two figures on the bridge. Ino-san was Naruto's friend. He felt a twinge of jealousy, and then wondered where it had come from. She had had such a sad smile. She had been wary of him, but not truly frightened. Then, she had formally introduced herself to him, as if he were just a normal person. No one had ever done that before. Even his father had never treated him normally. The smile returned to Itachi's face as he turned and continued up the street. It had been long since he had a friend. Would he ever be allowed to have one again? Slowly, he made his way back up to the inn he was staying at. The people on the street gave him wide berth. He felt like a leper. Itachi sighed inwardly. He had had enough of being kept at arm's length. It was how his whole life had been. Naruto sat on his couch, looking at the tons of food that lay strewn over the tables, countertop, and floor. How many people were they expecting? He went over names in his head. Ino, Choji, Shikamaru, Kiba, Akamaru, Shino, Hinata, Neji, Ten, Fuzzy Eyebrows, Guy, Kurenai, Kakashi. Don't think about that. Also Tsunade and Shizune, Genma, Konohamaru, Closet Pervert, Moegi, Udon, and Asuma. Kotetsu and Izumo never turned down a free meal, and neither did Anko, who would kick the crap out of him if he hadn't invited her anyway. His apartment was going to be very full. He heard a knock at the door, and grunted as he stood. When he got over to the door, he opened it to find a harassed-looking Riza-chan. She waved a tired hello, and he let her in. Are you okay? Naruto asked as she collapsed on the couch. She nodded. Do you need a nap? She seemed to consider for a moment, and then nodded. Well, you go and take a nap. We're going to be having company later. That should make you feel better. There's lots of junk food, and hopefully, we'll all have fun. She nodded, struggling to get out of her coat. Wow, she's really tired. He helped her up, and led her to the bedroom. When he had removed her shoes and her coat, he put them aside, and was about to put her to bed when there was another knock at the door. Naruto hurriedly pushed her under the covers and ran to the door. Ino was standing there with a big covered tray in her hands. He took it from her and said, "Come in. There's a lot of work to do, but we gotta be quiet." Riza-chan is sleeping. The blonde woman's eyebrow rose. She works at the pastry shop down the street. Apparently, today was very busy. Frowning, Ino walked into the kitchen. Okay, Naruto. Put that tray over next to your table. It has legs. I'll get started putting things in bowls and cutting the vegetables. Ino looked over at Naruto, who was unfolding the legs of the tray. Sorry I'm here so early. I just figured since you've never really had a party, you might like a little help. Naruto stood from adjusting the position of the tray, then removed the cover. No, that's all right. I really need the help. Like you said, I've never done this before. He went into the kitchen and started taking out every bowl he owned. Did you bring any pictures? I thought it might be nice if we all had at least one picture of Sakura with us. She reached into her pocket, pulling out a small photo album. Perfect. You can put it on the table next to mine. His picture book is significantly larger, but he had been on the same team with Sakura, and had an enormous crush on her, too. Half an hour later, everything was ready. Every usable surface in the apartment was covered with food. 10 minutes after that, the first guest arrived. It was Iruka. "Hi, Naruto, Ino. How are you guys?" "Fine. What about you, Iruka-sensei?" "Naruto, how many times do I have to tell you not to call me sensei anymore? I'm still only a chunin. You've been a junin for 2 years now." The younger man smiled sheepishly. "Sorry, I can't help it." Iruka smiled kindly at him. "Sit down, Iruka. Ino, I'm gonna go see if she's up to coming out yet." Naruto went to the back of the apartment and knocked on the bedroom door. He entered and closed the door behind him. She was still sleeping. "Riza-chan, will you get up? My friends Ino and Iruka are here, and they'd like to meet you." Riza opened her eyes, sitting up. She looked at him and blinked. "How long was I asleep?" "Not quite an hour. Ready for company?" She nodded. "Okay, put on your shoes and come out when you're ready." Iruka had already heard the story from Ino about this woman, and couldn't deny that he was curious to see if she really was like his former pupil. He sat on Naruto's couch, munching absently on a carrot stick, listening to Ino talking. Apparently, she had met Itachi. "You know, Ino, I don't think I need to tell you that it's not safe to talk to him." She stuck out her tongue at him. "I know that, Iruka. As if you had to tell me." Then she seemed to be remembering something. "But, he didn't seem to me to be a horrible person. He just seemed sad. Like all of the things he had done were weighing him down. It was like, hell, I don't know what it was like. Anyway, I wasn't scared of him." The instructor shook his head. He knew that Ino was one of his strongest students, but that she should not fear Itachi was rather extraordinary. Even Naruto was a little scared of him. But then again, Ino had never really been one to know when to back down from anyone, and that may have something to do with it. "Iruka, did you bring any pictures of Sakura?" He smiled and pulled out a few loose photos. "Okay, now just put them on the table. Thanks for coming. There is only one rule for this party. No one is supposed to be sad. Sakura wouldn't like it." He nodded. They were interrupted by Naruto as he came out of his bedroom. "Iruka, Ino, I'd like you to meet Morimoto Riza." Then, from the hallway, came a tall woman who, other than her height, and the color of her hair, really did look just like Sakura. Both Ino and Iruka had to try very hard to keep their mouths from hanging open. The woman waved hello to them. Ino rose quickly. "It's nice to meet you, Riza-san. I'm Yamanaka Ino. I work at Yamanaka Flowers." Her face was totally incredulous. "I'm sure Naruto has told you this, and you'll most likely get pretty tired of hearing it, but you look just like my friend Sakura." Riza smiled. Iruka was not far behind, and as Ino stepped aside, he bowed formally. "Hajimemashite, my name is Amino Iruka." Riza giggled, and he looked up at her, confused. "Naruto, is he always like this?" Her voice was playful. The younger man smiled, eyeing Iruka. "Nah, only when he first meets you. Doesn't know quite how to act around you yet." Iruka shot him a hurt look, and walked back to the couch, looking decidedly sulky. Naruto laughed at him. There was another knock at the door. Ino went to get it. This time, it was Konohamaru, with Moegi and Udon en tow, and they all rushed in. Moegi flung her arms around Naruto's neck, and gave him a huge wet kiss on the cheek. Ino snorted, and Konohamaru rolled his eyes. Udon seemed like he was going to fall asleep standing up, as usual. Naruto tried desperately to extricate himself from the overzealous shinobi. "Oi, Konohamaru, can you get this leech off of me? She's squeezing me to death." At that, both Konohamaru and Udon took hold of Moegi and yanked, and she came off of Naruto with a pout. Naruto shivered in disgust. Had she not been friends with Konohamaru, he wouldn't have invited her. Konohamaru was ignoring both he and Moegi now. His eyes had latched onto Riza. His fingers shook as he pointed at her, looking back at Naruto. Is she a ghost?" His face held a look of horror. This produced a chuckle from Riza. She walked over to Konohamaru, and ruffled his hair. "No, I am not a ghost. My name is Morimoto Riza. And you three?" Konohamaru suddenly made his nice guy pose, and Udon slouched over to his side, Moegi falling into place beside him. The overall effect was like the cover of a dorky comic book. "I am Konohamaru, grandson of the third Hokage. These are my teammates, Moegi and Udon. Pleased to meet you." Riza laughed again. "Full of youthful enthusiasm, isn't he?" she asked, turning to Naruto. He nodded, rolling his eyes. In about an hour, the entire apartment was full of people who had been invited to the party, as well as a few crashers. Kiba had brought Akamaru as had been expected, but he also brought his sister, whose name Naruto could never remember. There were people everywhere. The only room that was not full of people was the bathroom. Kotetsu had been hitting on Riza for the past half hour, and Naruto watched as she put him off time and time again. Kakashi sat in a chair in the living room, Kurenai sitting in his lap. They seemed a little too happy. Naruto supposed that his former sensei was due a little happiness after all of the horrible things he had happened to him, so he just shook his head. Hinata and Neji sat on the couch quietly conversing with those around them, but he could tell that Neji was a little nervous. His hand kept fiddling with a fold of Hinata's kimono that had bunched up next to him. Naruto walked over to them. "Hi, Neji. Hinata-chan, how are you today?" "Good, Naruto-kun," both of them said at the same time. Hinata looked up at Naruto and said quietly, "She really looks like Sakura-chan, doesn't she, Naruto-kun?" He nodded. "She's a little different, though, too. She's not as shy as Sakura was." Hinata's eyes became sad. "Oi, Hinata-chan, you're forgetting Ino's rule. No one is allowed to be sad. We're here to celebrate Sakura-chan, not mourn." He smiled kindly at her, and then looked at Neji. "You two should have more fun. Always so serious." He turned away, leaving a very confused Neji and a blushing Hinata. Naruto was always worried about them. He thought that Neji's face would freeze in that scowl, and that Hinata would scare herself to death. At least, that's how things usually seemed. There were several speeches, toasts to Sakura, and more pictures shown and stories told than anyone could count. It was a good time. At around midnight, Naruto stood on a chair and yelled over the crowd, "Okay. Now I have to actually go to work tomorrow, so you all need to go home." Everyone laughed, and it took nearly 10 minutes to get everyone out. Choji was the last to leave, even after Ino. Needless to say, there was no food left. He sighed and collapsed to the floor. "Ack, what a mess." Riza was leaning on the wall. She eyed him, chuckling. "What's so funny?" he asked, frowning. "Nothing. You're just funny like that." He got up and started to pick up all of the dishes and pile them in the sink. Riza helped him, cleaning the debris from the floor with a broom and a dustpan. Ino walked home, holding her picture album. She thought that it had been a good party. Sakura would have enjoyed it. She sighed. Too many regrets. Her apartment was only 2 blocks from Naruto's, and she arrived at her door in less than 5 minutes, in spite of her slow pace. Shikamaru had offered to walk her home, but she declined. She wasn't sure why, but she preferred to be alone at this point. Another reason for her not letting him walk her home was that every time the Sand Nins came to visit, Tamari would shoot her a very hostile glare if she came within 10 feet of Shikamaru. Ino might not be afraid of Itachi, but Tamari really was scary. When she reached her door and unlocked it, she noticed a note stuck between the door and the jamb. Plucking the thing out, she opened the door and went inside. Reaching out with her left hand, she found the light switch out of instinct. When the lights came on, she found her apartment much as she had left it. There was one exception. A bowl sat on her living room table, full of water, with a water lily floating on the surface. She blinked. What? Who? Then she remembered the note. Opening it, she read, "Dear Ino-san, I'm sorry to have invaded your privacy. You were not home, and I didn't want the lily to wilt. If you are not busy tomorrow evening, would you please meet me at the bridge when the sun sets? Arigato. Uchiha Itachi." Her mouth hung open as she swung the door shut absently. "He brought me a present? Why?" She walked over to the table, looking at the lily. The bowl was a simple black lacquered wooden piece, well formed, and the lily was perfect. It was the sort of simple arrangement that she did herself at times. He had good taste. She smiled to herself, though she was unsure of what he might want. There was something she saw when she looked at him, something buried. He was a man who had killed his entire family, but she thought that he might not be quite the same person anymore. Ino didn't know how to describe it, but she couldn't bring herself to be afraid of him. Not even the Akatsuki coat scared her. For a long time, she sat next to the low table, staring at the gift Itachi had left her, wondering about his purpose. She folded her arms on the table, and rested her chin on them. Could there be a hidden message in the gift? It was unlikely that Itachi knew the language of flowers, so the choice of flower wouldn't be anything special. Perhaps it was the color. As her thoughts became hazy, her vision blurred, sleep taking her. Tsunade watched for a short time as Itachi used his specialized Sharingan to torture his brother. It seemed to be having much more effect now, and Tsunade was almost satisfied that he was broken. She had celebrated with everyone else the night before, but she still wanted to see Sasuke suffer. That was why she had contacted Itachi. He was an S-class felon, but she was willing to take a chance if it meant that Sasuke would suffer greatly before he died. The young Uchiha whimpered, a pitiful sound. As she walked away, she smiled. Naruto had been training his genin for a few hours now, trying the bell routine again. Amy had been lurking about 50 meters behind him for the past 20 minutes, while the others seemed to be holding their positions to his left and right. He was scribbling something on a small notepad, noting their progress, when they decided to make their move. Finally working together, huh? Idate came from his right, and Hayami from his left. Smiling, he put his pad and pencil away. They came at him with all their strength, and he countered their attacks easily, until Amy used the Shuriken Kage Bunshin no Jutsu from behind him, and he was forced to dodge them all, and knock her to the ground. Damn, I should not have taught you that. The other two were still coming at him, and Idate and Hayami both used their trademark jutsus at the same time. Idate, a more than proficient genjutsu user, created the illusion of a ring of fire around Naruto, while Hayami somehow had learned how to use the same fireball technique that Sasuke had. He used it just as Naruto released Idate's genjutsu. The young Junin barely managed to get away with no more than the back of his vest being singed. After knocking both boys to the ground, he clapped. That was great, you guys. Your teamwork has greatly improved. Amy stood up, her hair still smoking from Hayami's katen. Do you mind, Baka? She smacked Hayami. The boy snorted in laughter. Naruto sighed as he broke the two of them apart. That's enough. Now, I want you all to train together for 3 hours tomorrow. You have passed this test. I have another one planned for next week. He left them, and went to see what Ino and Iruka were up to at the academy. Ino's feet dragged. Her class had not been good. All they wanted to do was gossip. While it was not bad every now and again, she was having a harder time controlling them lately. It was probably the fact that she just wasn't feeling up to teaching at this point. When she neared the bridge, she did not see anyone there, and wondered if Itachi had tricked her. She climbed up and sat on the railing, swinging her feet in the air. The sun was turning pink now, and settling in among the trees to the west. The wind was getting colder, and she hugged herself against it. In spite of the chill, it was nice here. The air felt cleaner near the river, and she closed her eyes, breathing it in. She felt something warm wrap around her shoulders. Opening her eyes, she looked down to find a coat. To be more specific, an Akatsuki coat. Ino turned her head, finding Itachi standing behind her and to the left. He wore a simple black shirt and pants of the same color. He carried no weapons, as he was not allowed to do so within the walls of Konoha. He was much less intimidating without the coat. She swung down from the railing, and came to rest in front of him. Arigato for the lily, Itachi-san. It's beautiful. The man smiled. She gathered the coat around herself. What was it you wanted to see me about? He gestured toward a path, and they began to walk. For a time, he was silent. This did not really bother Ino. He didn't seem like the talkative type to her. After about 10 minutes, he said, I wanted to ask you why you didn't seem to be afraid of me. Everyone is. When I walk down the street, people shy away. Ino felt a pang of compassion for him. It must feel terrible to have that happen to you. She thought about it for a while, then said, I suppose it's because I can see a sadness in you. It's difficult to fear someone if there's such deep sadness. I know what you've done, but it doesn't scare me. You seem wiser than that now. I can't really describe it. Sorry. They walked on. Ino-san? Would you like to have dinner with me? She stopped walking. Ino blinked, unable to believe that he had just asked her on a date. Should she? Her curiosity about him was burning, making her want to go, but she was unsure if she should. Hell, why not? Yes. She turned to him, and saw a mildly surprised look on his face. But on one condition. And that is? That you actually talk to me. Itachi laughed. It seemed a little odd, but it was genuine. He nodded. All right, we can play 20 questions if you like. That made her laugh, but she couldn't have asked for a better answer. They turned around, and went back up the path. For a long time, neither one said a word. Ino merely enjoyed his presence, and Itachi did the same. Then, Itachi spoke, beginning their game. What is your favorite color? I suppose that would be blue. And yours? Black, I guess. Ino laughed. I never would have thought. What sarcasm, Ino-san. Itachi was smiling. She thought it was a nice smile, even if it was sad. Alright then, Ino said. What's your favorite food? Udon with vegetables. You? Chocolate cookies. But I don't have them that often. Itachi seemed to think for a few minutes, trying to find another question to ask. Ino was beginning to think he had spaced out. They entered a restaurant and sat at a table. Suddenly, he asked, "What did you think when you read my note?" Ino was surprised by such a direct question. For a moment, she considered lying, then thought better of it. She didn't want to lie to him. I wondered why you had left me a gift, and why you wanted to meet me." She blushed, unable to look at him. His red eyes were disconcerting, but not in a frightening way. They simply looked on her with an intensity that she was not sure how to feel about. "Oh, I suppose that one is simple enough. I thought, after I talked to you, that you might be able to understand me." Was I wrong? Itachi leaned back in his chair. The waiter came at that point, and took their orders. When the man had left, Itachi asked, "Well, was I?" Ino was flustered. She felt that she did understand him, and it was that fact that bothered her. Why could she identify with him? There was such sadness in his eyes, and he was lonely, that much she knew. And other than that, she knew next to nothing about him. How did she know that she could understand his feelings? For a long time, she didn't know what to say. Finally, she shook her head. "I don't know how to explain it, but I think I can. There are things that I can see when I look at you, sadness, anger, and you carry this immense weight on your shoulders. How do you bear it?" Her voice had started to catch in her throat, but she refused to cry. "I bear it alone. It's the only way I know how." Just then, their food came out, and they began to eat. Every so often, Ino looked up at him. He had been alone his entire life. Even before he had killed his family and left the village, he had been alone. That sort of life was enough to make anyone nuts. He didn't seem insane, though. How has he survived? I would have died long ago. Though she had promised herself she wouldn't cry, hot salty tears began to fall into her rice, disappearing among the grains as she ate. After a moment, she averted her face, and tried to wipe away the tears with the back of her hand. "Ino-san? Are you alright?" I'll be fine, Itachi. Just give me a minute." "No, I think I should take you home. You're upset." His voice was kind and firm. She nodded. He got the attention of the waiter, and paid for the food, thanking him. "Come on, Ino. Let's go." As he took her arm, she realized two things. Both she and Itachi were acting as if they had known one another for years. The other realization was that he was touching her. Neither one made her uncomfortable. She allowed him to lead her from the restaurant. Ino leaned on him for support, and her tears continued. She didn't understand. Why was she crying? It didn't matter if she understood it or not. The fact of it was that she was crying. She felt as if his sadness had somehow transferred to her. Itachi wrapped her in his coat, and she pulled it around herself, hiding her face in its folds, and leaning on its owner, letting him lead the way. Itachi's coat fell from Ino's shoulders as he sat her on her couch. She was still huddled in on herself. The night before, he had sat on the roof of a nearby building, watching her through the window of the living room. She had come into her apartment and seen his gift, then read the note he left her. After reading the note, Ino had gone over to the table, and sat staring at the white flower floating on the water, until she fell asleep. She looked peaceful. Now, she seemed to be on the edge of hysterics. He was not sure how to deal with this sort of situation. Then, he thought of how his mother would have acted. That gave him a stab of pain. Pushing that feeling aside, he sat next to her, replacing his coat on her shoulders. Ino buried her face in his chest, and he felt her body shaking against him as she continued to cry. Why was she crying? Awkwardly, he put his arms around her. Slowly, her shaking eased, and her tears stopped. Her breathing became more steady, and he realized that she was asleep. His eyes fell to her face, still stained with tears. It suddenly came to him what she had said during dinner. "There are things that I can see when I look at you. How do you bear it? This woman was crying for me?" Why? His heart skipped. He used the edge of his sleeve to wipe tears from her face. How could anyone cry for him? Did she pity him? That was not a welcome thought. He did not want pity from her. What do you want from her? That was a very good question. It had been her sad eyes that had drawn him in. He wanted someone to understand him. He wanted someone to see him for who he was, not what he had done. As he sat there, holding this woman to his chest, he felt an alien sensation. It was at once calm and exhilarating. Peace? He thought that it must be, though he had never known this feeling in his life. His body leaned back, settling against the cushions, and he closed his eyes. Should he leave? Ino was asleep, and he was sure that she would be startled to find him holding her when she woke, but he couldn't bring himself to let go of her. She had given him peace, and he didn't want it to leave him. He leaned down, looking at her face again. Quietly, he whispered to her, knowing that she couldn't hear him, "Arigato, Ino." Arigato. He leaned back again, and closed his eyes. When sleep came, his dreams were not the nightmares that had plagued him for years. His dreams were of everyday things, and he knew even in his dreams that he had Ino to thank for it. It was early morning, and Neji was taking a short walk before training. Everyone was still reeling from Sasuke's capture and Sakura's death. But it seemed that the woman's death was bringing people together in a way that had not been expected by anyone. From what he had seen at Naruto's apartment, Kakashi and Kurenai were together. That wasn't a huge surprise. Naruto seemed to have found someone. The fact that the woman could have been Sakura's twin probably had something to do with it. Riza was different from Sakura in ways that seemed to suit Naruto, though. He looked up at the sky from under the trees between the buildings of the Hyuga compound. Was Sakura doing this? All of these lines of fate seemed to come back to Sakura and Sasuke. Sasuke's attack on Hinata had caused him to realize how much his cousin really meant to him. On numerous occasions, he had nearly told her. But he had decided to wait. The timing had to be right, and the situation should be perfect. He thought of the dinner they had shared, and that look in her eyes. Just that thought made his breath catch. She never really had to say anything to let him know how she was feeling. As he rounded the corner, he saw Hinata, walking in her little garden, among bushes of lavender and rosemary. The sun shone down on her, and reflected off of her hair as she leaned down to check on the plants. He hid himself behind the corner of the building, watching her. She was the picture of grace and beauty. He felt a kind of freedom when he looked at her that he did not understand, and that scared him a little. He suddenly felt his feet moving. Hinata looked up when she sensed movement. Neji was walking toward her, and she replaced her scissors in her pocket, lifting off the cutting that she had just made. "Ohio, Hinata-sama." Neji's eyes caught the light, sending violet flares through their white depths. Hinata tried very hard not to blush. "Ohio, Ana-san, what brings you here?" Neji's feet did not stop at the respectful distance of 5 feet as they usually did. He now stood with his feet mere inches away from hers. She looked up at him, eyes questioning. His left hand started to move, reaching for her right. Hinata started when he took her hand. "What are you doing? I thought you'd decided that you were going to wait until the time was right?" Then he saw her smile. Fate seemed to have control of his body and mind. His lips began to move, words issuing from them that he had been rehearsing in his head every day for a year. "Hinata-sama." Her eyes held an expectant expression. "You are the most important person in the world to me. I have sworn to protect you, not because you are the heir, but because you are very special to me." He could see tears forming in her eyes. Neji wanted to wipe them away, but he could not stop. When you were attacked, I wanted to rip Uchiha to pieces. I couldn't bear the thought of him hurting you. You are my Hinata-sama. I love you." For an instant, Hinata stood stunned. Neji swallowed hard, waiting for her to say something, anything. She smiled through her tears, and threw her arms around his neck, holding him close. He could feel her tears soaking through his shirt. "I love you, Ana-san," she breathed, barely audible. After long moments of the two of them remaining this way, Neji pulled away from her. "Hinata-sama, I spoke to your father, and he has given his consent." He took her hand again, and placed it over his heart. "Will you marry me, Hinata-sama?" Her eyes widened. It must be too soon. Damn it. To his surprise, Hinata reached up and touched his face. Her hands held him there, and she stood on tiptoe, placing a small, soft kiss on his lips. "Hi, Neji. But haven't you asked me already?" His words from more than a year before came back to him. "Let me protect you, forever." Smiling slightly, he said, "I suppose I did, then, but I thought you wouldn't remember." Hinata lay her face on his chest. "I can't forget." Riza sat staring at the sleeping man on the other end of the bed. His messy blonde hair shone in the morning light, and he looked very peaceful. She wanted to curl up next to him, but thought that it might scare him when he woke up. He was still uncomfortable with the sleeping arrangement. Since today was her day off, She had wanted to sleep in, but couldn't help waking up at her normal time of 6 in the morning. Now, all she could do was sit there and try not to wake him up. Screw that. If I have to suffer, so does he. A mischievous grin spread across her features, and she scooted across the bed to him. Riza tickled Naruto's nose with her finger. She was expecting him to swat at her hand groggily. Instead, his hand grabbed her wrist, twisted her arm behind her back, and he shoved her down onto the bed. She blinked up at him. He was fully awake now, and staring down at her in horror. His eyes were wide, and he stuttered, "GG Gomen, Riza-chan." He released her arm, but remained where he was, leaning over her. "Are you okay?" "Yes, I'm fine. Are you?" He seemed to become instantly uncomfortable when he realized the position they were in. She still wore one of his shirts, and it was pushed up under her ass, revealing her underwear and the smooth expanse of her stomach. His knees were between hers, and his hands were on either side of her shoulders. For her part, she was not that comfortable herself. Naruto had her in a very compromising position, and he was wearing nothing but a pair of boxer shorts. Then there was the way he looked at her. "Fine," Naruto said, but the blush on his cheeks said that he was far from fine. He moved to get up, but his knee slipped on the sheets, and he fell, landing on top of her. They both grunted. "Gomen," he said, looking painfully embarrassed. He was just so cute when he was flustered. Now in a much more suggestive position, Riza had just become officially uncomfortable. She could feel his bare skin against hers, and his breath on her face. And he was still looking at her with those eyes. Naruto opened his mouth as if to speak, but nothing came out. He shut his eyes tightly for a moment, as if to clear an image from his mind. When he opened them again, he seemed more calm. It was good that one of them was calm, because she certainly wasn't. Her heart seemed like it was going to jump out of her chest at any moment, and her breathing had become shallow. She felt his hand brush her hair away from her face. His eyes seemed to be looking through her. What was he seeing? Did he see his friend, Sakura? Naruto? His face lowered toward hers, and she knew that she shouldn't let him do this. He wasn't looking at her. He was seeing someone who wasn't there. It took every ounce of strength she had, but she pushed him away from her. He seemed confused and hurt. "Gomen, Naruto. It's just, you were seeing Sakura-chan just now, weren't you?" He looked ashamed. "I guess I was, a little. You look so much like her, but you're different from her, too. I feel differently about you. With Sakura, it was always me trying to deal with a crush. It was stupid. I miss her, and I wish she was still alive. But I can't really explain how I feel about you. It's complicated." He smiled weakly. "And here I thought you were easy to read." She leaned toward him and looked him in the eye. "Who am I?" "Riza-chan." "Good." She took his face in her hands and kissed him gently. He was too shocked to move at first. Then his arms wrapped around her, pulling her closer, and he returned her kiss with an intensity that was almost frightening. After a long moment, they pulled away from one another, needing air. "And don't you forget it," she said breathlessly. "I won't." As her eyes opened, Ino saw dark cloth surrounding her, and felt a pair of arms around her. She raised her head cautiously, and saw Itachi sleeping, his head leaning back on the couch cushions. He was holding her in his sleep. Smiling, she gently pulled his arms away from herself, and stood, covering him with his coat. It was about 9 in the morning, and her day off. Saturday, a day of rest. She was a little stiff from sleeping upright, but a shower would fix that. When she got into the bathroom, she yanked off her shoes and took off her leg wrappings, then got out of her Chunin uniform. After turning on the shower, she poked her head out of the bathroom, and saw that Itachi was still asleep on the couch. She smiled. He must have been tired. The hot water loosened her muscles, and she felt much better when she was done. Wrapped in a towel, her wet hair falling down her back in a messy mass, she left the bathroom, and walked to her bedroom, which was closer to the living room. After pulling on a dark blue wool sweater and a long brown skirt, she pulled on a pair of brown boots, then left her bedroom while still brushing out her hair. When she came into the living room, she found that Itachi was not on the couch. His coat was still there, however. On it was a note. She picked it up, and read, "Dear Ino, I'll be at Konoha prison until 3 o'clock. My coat is left as a promise that I will return. Yours, Itachi." Why did she have that odd feeling in her stomach? She was happy. Itachi had stayed with her, made sure that she was all right. As she went into the kitchen to make herself breakfast, she wondered what in the world it was she felt for him. Ino ate her eggs in silence, then decided that she would read that book that Shikamaru had lent her. It was in a small drawer in the table near the couch. Taking it out, she lay on the couch after she neatly folded Itachi's coat and set it on the floor nearby. After a while, her legs were starting to get cold. She reached out and took up the coat, covering herself with it. The way it smelled reminded her of the river, and how the air seemed so clean there. And that brought her thoughts back to Itachi again. Ino dropped Shikamaru's book on the floor, and curled up under the coat, closing her eyes and breathing in Itachi's scent. It was comforting. Soon, she fell asleep. It was a long time before she was awakened by someone knocking at the door. It was cold in her apartment, so she wrapped the coat around herself, sticking a hand out to open the door. It was Itachi. She smiled nervously and handed him his coat. Then she went to adjust the heat so that it wouldn't be so cold. He followed her into her apartment and stood watching her. She could feel his eyes on her. That intense gaze tickled at the back of her mind, making her want to look at him. She distracted herself by starting a kettle for tea. "Would you like tea, Itachi?" she asked loudly from in the kitchen. "Yes, please." His voice was so close that she jumped, the faucet spraying water all over herself. He had been standing directly behind her, nearly touching her. How had she not sensed his presence? She blotted the water with a towel, and put the kettle on the stove, still not having looked at him. Her face began to heat, a blush building. Ino was now searching for the tea canister, and having no luck at all. Then, she opened the last cabinet, and saw it on the top shelf. Before she could reach for it, Itachi's hand had taken it down, and set it on the countertop in front of her. She held it tightly, her knuckles whitening. His presence behind her was making her feel strange. Her heart was beating very fast, and her mind was racing. Finally, she couldn't take the tension any longer. She whirled to look at him, and found him looking down at her, that same intense stare, so close now. She tried to say, but was interrupted by her heart's chaotic rhythm, and by Itachi, who suddenly took her face in his hands and bent his face to hers, kissing her. Though sudden, there was nothing rough about this movement. She dropped the tea canister. "What is going on? Uchiha Itachi is kissing me." Her hands seemed to move on their own, taking handfuls of the front of his shirt and pulling him closer. She couldn't understand anything that was happening. Her feelings toward him were a mystery, just as he was. But being like this with him felt right. His hands released her face, but she did not let go of him. She pulled him to her, and felt his arms around her. She was now backed against the cabinets, the wooden countertop pushing into her back. Itachi pulled away from her. "Gomen, Ino. I didn't mean to." He had apparently lost control of himself. She smiled. "Oh, yeah, I hated that. You should never do that again." Her voice dripped with sarcasm. He seemed relieved that she wasn't angry. The kettle began to whistle, and she reached around him to remove it from the stove, and then turn off the burner. Then, she picked up the tea canister off of the floor, and started to actually make the tea. As the tea was steeping, she turned to him. "How long have you wanted to do that?" He looked surprised. "I suppose, truthfully, since I saw your eyes when you stood on the bridge. But the feeling was only slight, at first. It's been growing for the past couple of days." He looked at her, his red eyes keen. "Last night, when you fell asleep in my arms, I felt something I had never felt before." He stepped toward her, and lay his palm on her cheek. "I felt peace." He could not believe he had just told her everything that had been on his mind for the past 3 days. Ino was standing there, looking up at him, a strange look in her eyes. She seemed to be thinking about something. Itachi had been surprised when she returned his kiss, even pulling him to her. She was so beautiful and kind, and he knew that he needed her. It hurt him just to look at her, because he knew that any peace he might feel would only last as long as his brother could hold out. Now, he was sure that she felt something for him as well. While part of him rejoiced, another mourned. He felt her loss already. Itachi's breath became labored, and his body started to shake. His vision blurred, and then he saw Ino again. There was something warm and wet running down his face. He cried, closing his eyes, and felt utterly helpless. It was not long before his knees gave out. His brother would not hold out for much longer. He knew that as soon as he was completely broken, Tsunade would have him executed, and then he, Itachi, would have to leave Konoha. He fell to the floor, shaking. Ino's arms were suddenly around him, and he pressed his face into her shoulder. "What's wrong?" she said in a pleading voice. "Please, Itachi, you're scaring me." He opened his eyes and lifted his head to look at her. When he breaks, I'll have to leave. I won't ever see you again, will I? At these words, her eyes blazed in anger. He blinked. How had he made her angry? Don't you ever talk like that. Ino's eyes took on a feverish look. Don't ever? I guess she hadn't thought of it before now. Then, the feverish look was gone, and it was replaced by something very different. You wouldn't be allowed to come back? Never? He shook his head. Her face softened, and in a tone that made his pulse quicken, she said, "Then let's make the most of the time we have." She kissed him then, revealing all of her feelings in an instant. Words were not needed for either of them. He held her close, the feeling of peace washing over him again, and he found himself wanting it to last, needing it to last. Keeping his arms around her, he began to stand, and lifted her off her feet. Itachi started to walk to the back of the apartment. He looked into her eyes, and she smiled up at him. They entered Ino's bedroom, and he gently lay her on the bed. Sasuke's mind was trying to go in every direction at once. He thought of how badly he wanted to kill his brother, but then his thoughts would suddenly turn to the way Sakura had looked as the life drained from her eyes. It always seemed to come back to that. Naruto's words haunted him. She loved you. He had killed her. Killed Sakura. She loved him. He had killed her. These words echoed through his head, just as his screams echoed through the empty cells that surrounded him. He wanted to escape, to leave this place. But he could not. He could not even touch the chakra beads around his neck. He thought of how he had nearly raped Hinata, and how he had looked on the woman the other day in the same way. It had been long since he had wanted a woman. He had been satisfied with other things, but he had wanted Hinata. He had wanted the woman who found he and Naruto in her apartment. Why had he wanted her? He did not understand. Recalling her face, he realized that she looked like Sakura. Sakura, beautiful, kind Sakura. Dead Sakura. He screamed again, so long that his throat became raw with the duration and force of it. Breathing raggedly, he crawled out of the corner, and motioned for the guard to come closer. The man took only one step nearer. "Please," he rasped, "I need to talk to Uzumaki Naruto." "Please." The man looked at him like he was a cockroach, drawing away in disgust. Then the guard calmed himself and nodded. He left, and returned a few moments later. "The request has been made, Uchiha. With any luck, Naruto can see you before your brother comes back." The man leaned against the opposite wall, and looked away from him. Sasuke collapsed again, unable to remain sitting up. He knew that he was close to breaking completely. When that happened, he would die. Tsunade would see to that. She would see to it personally, if necessary. Huh? Naruto heard a knock at the door, and lifted his head. He was still very groggy. The knock came again, and he sat up, disentangling himself from Riza. Looking down on her sleeping form, he smiled. Then he pulled on a pair of pants and a shirt, and padded to the door. He opened it, and saw Kotetsu. "What's up, Kotetsu?" The other man stood there with his usual arrogant smirk, and sighed. "Uchiha Sasuke has requested to see you." Naruto's eyebrow quirked upward. "Why?" "Don't know, Naruto. He just said he needed to talk to you. From what Rado said, the guy's out of his gourd. Just keeps screaming every few minutes." He was surprised that he could even talk. Kotetsu scratched his head. "You're supposed to come immediately." "Hi, I'll be there soon." He closed the door on Kotetsu and ran to his bedroom. What could Sasuke need to talk to him about? Could he want to ask for his help? Even if he was insane, he wouldn't ask for it. He entered the bedroom, and grabbed his vest, shoes, and forehead protector. Then, he bent to kiss Riza, and left a note telling her that he would be back in a few hours at most. He pulled on his shoes and vest on the way out of the door and tied on his forehead protector. Once into the street, he spared no speed. In 10 minutes, he had made the trip out to Konoha prison, and was on his way to Sasuke's cell. When he got there, he did not recognize his former friend. The person who sat huddled in the corner of the cell as he handed off his weapons, vest and forehead protector to Rado was not the Uchiha Sasuke that he had captured. It was far, even, from the Sasuke he had met in the academy. This creature was frail, shaking, and paler than could be imagined even for Sasuke. He smiled weakly up at Naruto. Sasuke's heart leapt at the sight of Naruto. He tried to stand, but could not. Naruto instead knelt in front of him. He bowed his head in shame. "Gomen, Naruto." He heard only silence. "Only now do I understand. I understand. I have become the monster I sought to destroy. And in doing so, I killed the one person I know I could have loved. I know that it took being brought to the edge of insanity to make me realize it, and that only makes it worse." He looked up at Naruto, tears falling from his eyes. Naruto's face was a mask of shock. "I loved her, Naruto. Deep inside, I just wouldn't let myself see it." His eyes became frantic, and he scooted a couple of inches closer to his former friend. "I have one favor to ask of you." "What?" Sasuke lowered his voice, out of fear that Rado would hear him. "Kill me." Naruto was having flashbacks to what happened on the bridge in the Wave Country with Haku. The young man had asked that Naruto kill him, because he could not be of any more use. This was different, though. Sasuke was delusional, insane. He had been made so by hour upon hour of torture under the Mangekyo Sharingan. He finally realized how he felt about Sakura, but it was too late. "Why should I?" Naruto looked at Sasuke's frantic eyes, and saw the fear in them. "Are you afraid of your brother? Of Tsunade-sama?" "No. I have undergone so much of Itachi's torture that I think I'm getting used to it. I know that the Hokage wants me dead, and she'll kill me soon anyway. But, if you kill me, maybe there will be meaning in my death. I don't want my death to be as meaningless as my life." Again, Naruto was shocked by this man's words. Was this really Sasuke? This couldn't be the same fierce shinobi he had grown up with. Sasuke? He was having such a hard time reconciling the image of this person before him to that of the boy he knew, that he was having doubts as to the identity of this person. Sasuke launched himself at Naruto, latching onto the front of his shirt. "Please, Naruto, I've never begged anyone for anything, except my brother, when I asked him not to kill me. I think now that it would have been better if he had. Please, kill me." Naruto felt pity for him. How had the proud Uchiha been reduced to such a state? "I can't." Sasuke broke down, sobbing like a child, and shaking uncontrollably. Naruto looked to Rado. The man only shrugged. He scooped Sasuke up from the floor, marveling at how light he was. He placed him on the cot in the cell, and looked down on him. His mouth became a grim line. "This is not the way a shinobi should die." He looked at Rado. "This is not what Sakura would have wanted. Where's Tsunade?" "Probably in her office. Shizune has her doing paperwork." "Good. Give me my things. I'm going to talk to her." He took one last look at Sasuke, and that knife of pity twisted in his guts again. As he left the empty cells, he said to himself, "I have to stop this. It's wrong. Everything about this is wrong." That was true. There was no reason why Sasuke should be treated any differently from the other few murderers they had in the prison. They were imprisoned until they were seen fit to re-enter society, unless their crimes were of a certain degree. Then they were executed, but not like this. Tsunade was being too cruel. Sakura would not have wanted to see Sasuke like this. She loved him, more than her own life. She gave her life to stop him from doing what he had set out to, but not to save Tsunade. His friend had only wanted to ensure that Sasuke wouldn't have killed the Hokage. She knew he would be put to death because of that. But now, her final wish was not to be granted. Naruto's hands balled into fists, his nails digging into the flesh of his palms. Blood began to drip from between his fingers as he ran through Konoha. He reached the Hokage's tower, and ran up the steps 3 at a time. "Tsunade, where are you?" he yelled. Flinging open the doors of her office, he found her frowning over papers. He flung an accusatory finger at her, spraying her with blood. "Tsunade, this is wrong. I have just been to see Sasuke. What have we done to him? Have you seen him?" She calmly wiped the blood from her face, and glared at him. "I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm avenging Sakura and the 12 Anbu who died with her." His voice was a low, rumbling growl now, his rage barely repressed. That is not what Sakura would have wanted. Tsunade's eyes grew wide, straying to a photograph on her desk. Naruto knew what it was. It was a photo of Sakura. Sakura tried to stop him, so that this wouldn't happen. She loved Sasuke, even though he had been corrupted by Orochimaru and his stupid revenge. "Please, let him die in a way that is fitting for a shinobi. When I went to see him just now, he begged me to kill him." Sasuke does not beg anyone. The Hokage's eyes fell. She knew that he was right, it seemed, and was now grudgingly ashamed of her behavior. "What do you suppose we should do, Naruto?" He was surprised by this question. She had not really ever asked his opinion before. "He is repentant. I don't think he would try to escape, so I think we should remove the chakra beads." Naruto then asked Tsunade a question that had just occurred to him. Have you been feeding him at all? He wasn't surprised when the woman shook her head. The beads sapped both chakra and physical strength, and if the person wearing them didn't eat, they fed on the body. Then give him food and water. And a fair trial. And stop Itachi from torturing him. Honestly, I can't believe that you would treat a human being this way, Tsunade. With that, he stormed out of the office, slamming the door shut. He couldn't believe it, the way they'd been treating him. He would see Sasuke restored to health. He would see him executed in an honorable way, if the trial found that it was necessary. For such a thing to occur, a jury would have to be drawn from not only Konoha, but from the sand as well. It would be the only way that Sasuke would have a fighting chance. He had already been punished nearly beyond the bounds of his sanity. How much more punishment could he take? If the Hokage followed his suggestions, then Sasuke could perhaps live, as Sakura had wanted him to. Naruto couldn't go home like this. I have to talk to someone. Ino. Yes, I could talk to Ino. He ran all the way to Ino's apartment. When he knocked on the door, it took nearly 5 minutes before Ino opened the door. She was wearing a bathrobe, and her hair was a mess. Naruto? Her perplexed expression only deepened when she saw the look on his face. What happened? Oh, hell, get in here. She grabbed the front of his vest and yanked him inside. Sit down. I'll be back. Ino left the room and went into her bedroom. Naruto heard muffled voices and much shuffling around. When she came back in, she was fully dressed, and her hair was somewhat neater. Behind her appeared Itachi. His eyes nearly popped out of his head, and Ino shot him a dangerous look. He knew that look. It said, shut up, or die. He took the first option. The elder Uchiha hoisted himself up onto the kitchen counter and sat, feet dangling in the air, silent. His face seemed different, though Naruto couldn't place what had changed. Ino snapped her fingers in front of his eyes. Hey, what the hell is going on? He told her everything, then turned to Itachi. Tsunade says that they haven't been feeding him, either. Is that true? Only a nod from Itachi. His torture is going to be cut off, Itachi. Your services are no longer needed. I'm going to oversee his recovery, if I have anything to say about it. I've been wanting my chakra beads back, too. Ino looked at him as if she did not know him. What? So, you just walked into the Hokage's office, and started shouting at her? And she didn't kill you? That's a stupid question, Ino. As soon as I told her that this wasn't what Sakura would have wanted, she realized how much of a fool she had been. That's all. He looked at Itachi. Do you have any objections? I don't enjoy torturing my brother, if that's what you're thinking. I live to correct my mistakes. Naruto did not understand this cryptic remark, but he understood the look in Ino's eyes when she turned her gaze toward the Uchiha. He understood it, he just couldn't believe it. Far be it from me to question who she falls in love with. He stood to leave. Sorry for, interrupting, Ino. His grin appeared out of nowhere, and Ino tried to hit him, but missed. Oh, you can't do any better than that? She swung again, missing again. I can't play now, Ino. I have to go and see Riza. You two have fun. Ino blushed, and Itachi merely waved goodbye. Kakashi sat in a chair across from Naruto. He regarded his former student, wondering what had caused such a drastic change in him. He was not the silly young man that he had seen just days before. The Naruto before him was decisive and serious. But he had to wonder at the young man's reasons. According to the Hokage, he had barged into her office, demanding better treatment for Sasuke, and the Hokage had complied, and even felt ashamed for the way that she had treated him. It's Naruto. Of course. He has a power to persuade people. Why'd I need to be there, Naruto? The young man leveled his gaze at his former teacher, and Kakashi was struck by how much he reminded him of the Yondaime Hokage. Blinking, he cleared the image from his head. Naruto spoke. Because I don't know what's going to happen when I remove the chakra beads. They've never been on anyone longer than a day, and he's had them on for a week. There's usually a dissipation of chakra, and it makes me a little dizzy for a minute. But I'm afraid it might knock me out, even with the Kyuubi. Why not ask Iruka or Ino? Naruto's eyes narrowed, and his anger flared again. Because I want you to be there. Sasuke knows you better. I want him to feel safe. You haven't seen him, Kakashi. He's fragile right now. I want him well for the trial. No excuses, you're coming. If you refuse further, I'll just talk to Kurenai. Kakashi's eyes widened. It was no secret, but to threaten him with talking to her. That's below the belt, Naruto. The young man smiled, looking, for all the world just like the Yondaime. I know. It's just that you're being such an ass. You have to come. I'm in charge of Sasuke's recovery, after Shizune. Tsunade Baba said so. He did have a point, and it seemed that there was no getting out of it. Fine. I'll go, but don't expect me to like it. I would never expect anyone to like seeing another human being like that. Naruto rose, frowning, and left Kakashi's apartment. The silver-haired man blinked. What is going on? Is Naruto finally realizing his potential? How did he grow so much in such a short time? Kakashi laughed. He had captured Sasuke, even though he had never been able to beat him before at anything, and he had made the Godem agree to his terms. Kids full of surprises. Ino stood on the outskirts of Konoha. She watched as Itachi's dark figure receded into the distance. He had left her, as she knew he would have to. She swore that she would not cry. But as she looked down at the code in her hands, she had to fight very hard not to. He had left the Akatsuki code with her. It was his pledge to return. He would come back, one day. When, she did not know, but he would. He would always come back. She turned back to the village, walking slowly, and laughed to herself. You always have had the worst luck with men, Ino. She was talking to herself, which made her laugh harder. As she entered the streets of the village again, people stared at her. She was, after all, carrying Itachi's code. She ignored them. Naruto had told them nothing, but what were they to think, since she was the only one who had accompanied the Uchiha to the edge of town? None of it mattered to her. She walked through the streets, looking people in the eye, defiantly. 6 weeks later. Shizune nodded. He's nearly back to his old self, Naruto. Sasuke sat up, looking over at Naruto. The blonde-haired young man smiled. Their relationship had not recovered fully from the events that happened 7 weeks prior, but it seemed that Naruto was serious about having him healthy when it came time for the trial. The date of the trial was set for a week from today. Naruto had brought a few things to the imprisoned Uchiha. He had taken him some clothes and a few photographs. Sasuke had pasted the photograph of Sakura on the wall, and said prayers in front of it every morning and night, asking for her forgiveness. During the hours when he could sleep, Sakura haunted his dreams, and he would occasionally wake up in the middle of the night, calling her name. Before he left Konoha, Itachi had come to see him. Little brother, be thankful for this second chance. Your friend must care greatly for you, or he would not be doing this. He had looked up at his brother, and seen a great sadness in his eyes. Do you still want to kill me, Sasuke? Do you truly regret what you did? More than anyone could imagine, except perhaps you, brother. You live with that burden as well, now. His brother's eyes seemed to cloud over, and then he seemed very peaceful. Have you found the peace you seek, Itachi? Itachi's eyes turned once again to his face. He nodded. Sasuke had thought as much. How? Love. And then he had gone. He still didn't understand what he had meant by that. Had he found love? Had he learned what love was? Did he mean that he really loved their family? Sasuke sighed. Shizune poked him between two of his ribs. What are you sighing for, Uchiha? You better be glad that Naruto did what he did. I am, Shizune-san, and I'm grateful. I was just thinking. Naruto watched as Shizune teased Sasuke. The medic Nin had taken a liking to him. Only Sasuke could add members to his fan club even while in prison for murder. The young Junin rolled his eyes. Okay. That's enough. Ino asked me to come and get you, Shizune. She isn't feeling well. Back at Ino's apartment, Naruto sat on her couch, and waited for the two women to come out of the bedroom, where Shizune had been examining Ino. They emerged after nearly half an hour. Both women looked stunned. Well? Naruto said testily. Ino, would you like to be the one to tell him? Shizune looked cautiously at the other woman. Of course. Naruto, I need you to do me a favor. I need you to find Itachi for me. Something in Naruto's brain wasn't working correctly. He didn't make any connection between Ino not feeling well and him needing to find Itachi. Why? She smiled slightly, amused by his confusion. Because I need you to tell him that the Uchiha line is still alive. I need you to tell him that he's going to be a father, Naruto. That something in his head that hadn't been working suddenly began to work. Oh, what the hell? You mean you're pregnant? Shizune sniggered, and Ino walked over to him and smacked him. No, Baka, I'm developing a new jutsu. Yes, I'm pregnant. I need you to go and tell him. He can't come back here, but I want him to know. But Ino, I can't leave now. Sasuke's trial is next week. I have to be here. Ino's eyes caught on fire. Ah, I can go after the trial, okay? Thinking frantically, he said, Shizune, should she be exerting herself? A lady in her condition should take it easy, right? Ino and Shizune looked at one another. Shizune grudgingly nodded. Ino stared daggers at Naruto. He silently thanked Shizune that she had agreed with him. I'll go as soon as I can, Ino. I promise. That seemed to placate her. His head was swimming. After a minute or two, it seemed to sink in that Ino was having Itachi's child, and the thought really didn't seem that odd anymore. Ino, you know what to name it if it's a girl, right? She smiled. Sakura, of course. Shizune smiled, and asked, what if it's a boy? I guess I'll name him, Itachi, after his dad. Why not name the kid Naruto? He smiled insolently at her. Both women looked at him, and said at precisely the same instant, one's enough. That made all three of them laugh. Shizune gave Ino some medicine for her morning sickness, and then she and Naruto left. They walked down the street, and Naruto was feeling in one of his old trouble-starting moods. So, Shizune-san, are you going to see Sasuke again today? I have my orders to check him twice daily, yes. Orders? What orders? I only remember the Hokage telling you to go once a day. His tone was full of suggestion. She looked at him with her eyes narrowed. What are you insinuating, Baka? What does that mean? Stop using such big words, Shizune-san. He was preparing to run, because he knew she was going to hit him soon. Shut up, Naruto. Shizune, do you like him? Naruto was serious now. I don't know. She was watching the ground as they walked. Does it matter? He's probably going to die soon. His anger rose, flooding his face. Of course it matters. Even if he is going to die, you should tell him. Especially if he's going to die. He needs us, Shizune. Tell him. She was still watching at the ground, refusing to look at him. I have to go home now. When I go to see Sasuke tomorrow, I hope that he's happy. His statement was more of an order, and Shizune looked at him, her mouth hanging open. As he walked, he thought of what had happened the day they took off the chakra beads. Rado, lock the door. Naruto turned to the man, nodding. As the key turned in the door, he looked over at Kakashi, who was leaning on the wall in the corner. Sasuke sat on the bed, and had just finished his first meal in more than a week. Alright, like I said, I don't know what's going to happen. Just keep an eye out for anything strange. He reached for the beads, and as his hands touched them, he felt the overwhelming amount of chakra that had built up within them. Swallowing audibly, he took hold of them, and unwrapped them quickly from Sasuke's neck, effectively canceling the jutsu. Sasuke fainted, and Naruto tried but could not let go of the beads. The chakra flowed into him, flooding his tenketsu, and he swayed on his feet. Kakashi, I'm feeling a little sick. The feeling passed quickly, but he still felt a little odd. His former sensei pushed himself off of the wall, chuckling. Have we learned our lesson about creating new jutsus? Naruto nodded. You too? He shook his head. Naruto pushed himself to his feet. Now, we have a lot of work to do, Kakashi. When he wakes up, we have to get him back to his former strength. When the silver-haired man began to protest, he said, that's enough, Kakashi. We have to. Sakura would want it this way. Naruto walked into Sasuke's cell to see a very stunned Sasuke sitting on his cot. Oi, Sasuke. What's wrong with you? The dark-haired young man turned his eyes to Naruto. He saw in those eyes surprise and shock. Shizune-san was just here. He pulled nervously at the collar of his shirt. Naruto wondered for a moment what had happened. She kissed me. Naruto laughed. And what? And did you like it? Naruto had his characteristic smile plastered across his face, the one that meant trouble. Sasuke's shocked look evaporated. Of course I liked it. Why wouldn't I? His eyes narrowed at Naruto. Are you starting on that shit again where you think I'm gay? Naruto held up his hands in a defensive gesture. Oh, so you're not, then? I mean, I know that you lived with nothing but men over in the Sound Village pretty much, and Orochimaru seemed like the type to like boys. The dark-haired young man stared daggers at him, but he blushed. Oh, he did. I had to sleep with one eye open for a while. Then I had exploding tags around my door at night. Then he stopped trying. Bastard. Sasuke shivered in disgust, sticking out his tongue. Naruto's old liking for his friend was beginning to return. He decided to let him in on Ino's condition. Sasuke, I guess I should congratulate you. The other man looked at him in utter confusion. You're going to be an uncle. Huh, Itachi? The blonde shinobi nodded. Itachi, and Ino. Ino? You mean Yamanaka Ino, that annoying girl that Sakura was always bitching at? He stared incredulously at Naruto. Naruto simply nodded. But, he can't come back. He's a missing nin. What will happen to the child? I suppose that the kid will end up a Yamanaka. Ino's mom and dad don't know yet, but I'm sure they'll be furious. Then again, she doesn't seem to care. She even said she'll name it after him if it's a boy. Naruto sat on the cot next to the stunned Uchiha. Then again, if you're given an easy sentence, you could help out once you get out of jail. Just think about it, Uncle Sasuke. Sasuke wrinkled his nose. I don't have much choice in the matter. I'm going to be an uncle, alive or dead. In any case, the Uchiha will live on. He laughed harshly. I can't believe that my brother, Ino? Damn, I never really saw anything special about her, but whatever floats his boat, so to speak. Shit, Naruto, you know I was a total jackass, right? Nodding, Naruto said, yup. And you know that now, I would never do those things, right? Yup, I guess I have to be grateful to him. Itachi, I mean. He helped me regain my sanity, even if I had to go insane first. He looked behind himself at Sakura's picture. It hurts, looking at her, but I need that pain. I need to remember it. I still can't believe that I killed her. His shoulders slumped, and he ran his fingers through his now long hair. Naruto smiled, squeezing Sasuke's arm. You know that girl? The one we crashed through her window? Sasuke nodded. Well, I'm kind of with her now. Sasuke's eyes widened. You work fast, Naruto. She made the first move, not me. I didn't trust myself with her, because she looks so much like Sakura. Then I let her sleep over while her window was being fixed, and I woke up to see her stark naked in my bedroom. It just kind of fell into place from there. Sasuke's eyes bulged. You're not serious. As a heart attack, what are you two talking about? The two men turned their heads guiltily toward the female voice coming from the doorway of the cell. It was Ino. Sasuke stood quickly from his seat on the cot, and rushed us over to Ino. Is it true, Ino? He asked excitedly. Man, Naruto thought, he's really psyched to be an uncle. She smiled, nodding. Sasuke looked happy. He turned to Sakura's picture on the wall again. Shaking his head, he said, I know she's doing this. She has to be. How else would you explain everything that's been happening? All three of them seemed to agree, without saying anything. They'd all been thinking it, really. Naruto looked over at the picture on the wall. She seemed to be smiling wider than before. Kakashi and Kurenai, Hinata and Neji, Naruto and Riza, Ino and Itachi. Now, apparently even Shizune and Sasuke. Sakura most definitely was taking a hand in things. All that was left was for Tsunade to find a man, and then things would get a little too happy. But then Naruto thought about it for a moment, and realized that the chances of Tsunade Baba ever finding a man willing to put up with her violent attitude was slim to none. That is unless Ero Sennin ever got through to her. It is, and as soon as your trial is done, and you're able to get on with your sentence, Naruto is going to go and find him. He has to know. Ino now seemed worried. He's your brother. How do you think he'll react? Sasuke frowned, shrugging. It's been a long time since he left. I really couldn't say. As far as I know, he'll want to visit as often as he can. I know that if it was me, I sure would. His tone had become one of envy. It was clear that he did not expect to live much longer, even if he did get a fair trial. He was not the favorite person among the people of Konoha. Not only did he leave the village, but he took over Orochimaru's position at the head of the Village of Sound. While having been in that position for only 1 year, he had tried to carry out some pretty nasty plans, though none of them really worked. As an evil mastermind, he was a complete failure. In the capacity of the leader of Sound, he'd always thought that Kabuto would be better. Now, since he was back here and on the verge of being executed as far as he knew, the silver-haired medic had most likely stepped in to fill the void. He licked his lips nervously. Naruto? HMN? Sasuke turned to him and said, I think, if I know Kabuto, that he's planning something. The sunny-haired man jerked upright, his face going from a lazy smile to a serious frown in an instant. He raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? I lived and worked with him for a long time, Naruto. I think I know a situation that he would find opportune. It would be prudent for the village to be on the lookout for him, I think. Sasuke was fiddling with the hem of his shirt, twisting it back and forth in his hands. He had developed a nervous habit of wringing whatever cloth was nearest him since his sessions with Itachi. Naruto rose quickly, walking purposefully to the door. "Rado!" he yelled, and the other Junin came running. "Let me out. I gotta go and talk to the Hokage." The man smiled, his scar twisting. As he turned the key in the door, he leaned close to the man's ear and whispered something to him. Then, he took off at a run, making for the Hokage's tower. Ino looked at Sasuke and shook her head. "He's not the old Naruto anymore, is he, Sasuke?" The dark-haired man shook his head. It would seem that he was not the old silly Naruto anymore, or at least not entirely. The woman smiled, nodding. "I guess that Riza is a good influence. Tell me about her, Ino." That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.